On a frozen night in March 1910, high in the mountains of the American Northwest, two trains sat buried beneath snow so deep the world itself seemed to disappear. Passengers waited, prayed, hoped, but above them, hidden in the darkness, something was moving. And one man, just one, understood what was coming. He tried to warn them. Most did not listen. By morning, the mountain would decide everything. High in the rugged wilderness of the Cascade Mountains, winter did not arrive gently. It came like a force of will. Snow fell not in inches but in feet. Winds did not whisper, they howled through the mountain passes like something alive. In February of 1910, the rail line near Wellington was already struggling. The tracks curved tightly along the mountainside, carved into cliffs that dropped into dark valleys below. Above those tracks rose steep slopes heavy with snow, layer upon layer, building weight with every passing storm. But the railroad could not stop. It never stopped. That was the promise of the modern world: movement, progress, connection, steel rails defying nature. At least, that was the idea. On February 24, two trains became trapped near Wellington. One was a passenger train filled with travelers heading west, families, businessmen, children wrapped in thick coats. The other was a mail train, loaded with letters, packages, and the quiet urgency of communication. They were stopped by snowdrifts too deep to clear. At first, no one panicked. Delays were common in the mountains. Railroad crews worked tirelessly with shovels and plows, cutting through drifts that seemed to rebuild themselves overnight. Passengers laughed, played cards, shared stories. It felt like an inconvenience, not a warning. Days passed, then more snow came. By the end of February, over 10 feet of snow had fallen. Then 20. Then more. The mountains disappeared beneath a white silence so complete it felt unnatural. Trees bent under the weight, roofs groaned. Even sound seemed muffled, swallowed by the endless snow. Inside the trains, the mood began to shift. Food supplies thinned. Coal for heating had to be rationed. Windows frosted over from the inside. Children stopped laughing. Adults began watching the mountains because something felt wrong. His name was Henry Collins. He wasn't famous. He wasn't important, at least not in the way history usually defines importance. He was a railroad watchman. His job was simple: watch the slopes, listen for danger, warn if something moved. Most days that meant nothing. Snow fell, wind blew, trains passed. But Henry had spent years in the mountains, and mountains, he believed, spoke, if you knew how to listen. That night, he heard something different. Not loud, not obvious. A low, distant cracking sound, like wood breaking, deep beneath the earth. He stepped outside into the cold. The air was heavy, too still, too quiet. He looked up at the slope above the tracks, and for the first time in years, he felt afraid. Henry reported what he heard. Some listened, most didn't. Railroad officials had a problem. They couldn't move the trains forward, they couldn't move them back, and moving passengers through deep snow in freezing temperatures was just as dangerous. So they waited, because waiting felt safer than acting. But Henry didn't stop watching. Each night he walked the tracks with a lantern, scanning the mountain. Each night the sounds grew louder. Cracks, shifts, tiny movements beneath thousands of tons of snow. The mountain was changing, and Henry knew what that meant. By early March, the storm finally slowed. For the first time in days, the sky cleared. Sunlight touched the mountains again. Passengers stepped outside, stretched, smiled. "It's over," someone said. "It's finally over." But Henry didn't smile, because he knew something the others didn't. The most dangerous moment isn't when the snow is falling, it's when it stops, because that's when the weight settles, and when it settles, it breaks. March 1st, 1910. The sky was clear. Stars filled the mountain sky like frozen fire. The air was silent, too silent. Inside the trains, people tried to sleep. Some wrote letters, some prayed, some simply stared into the darkness outside their windows. Henry walked the tracks one last time, lantern in hand, boots crunching against packed snow. He stopped beneath the slope, looked up, and heard it again. Louder now, a deep, rolling crack. Not one sound, but many, like the mountain itself was shifting in its sleep. Henry turned and began to run. In the mountains, danger does not always announce itself. Sometimes it waits, sometimes it watches, and sometimes it gives you just enough time to decide what kind of person you are before everything changes. There are moments in history when time does not move forward. It holds its breath. And in that silence, something breaks. On the night of March 1st, 1910, in the frozen heights of the Cascade Mountains, the mountain was no longer waiting. It had decided. Henry Collins ran, not walked, not hurried, ran. His boots slipped against packed snow as the lantern in his hand swung wildly, throwing desperate light into the darkness. Behind him, the mountain groaned, a deep, unnatural sound, like something tearing apart beneath the surface of the world. He didn't need to see it. He knew. The snowpack had failed. Thousands of tons of it, and it was coming down, fast. Inside the passenger cars, most people were asleep. The long days of waiting had exhausted them. Children curled beneath blankets. Men leaned against wooden seats. Women clutched bags close to their chests. The train creaked softly in the cold, a strange, fragile peace. Then, a distant sound, like thunder, but not from the sky. One passenger stirred, another opened their eyes. "What was that?" someone whispered. No one answered, because no one knew. Henry burst into the lead car, breathless, face pale beneath frost. "Wake them!" he shouted. "Get everyone up, now!" Passengers blinked in confusion. "What's happening?" "It's the mountain," Henry said, voice breaking. "It's coming down, right now." Panic doesn't begin as chaos. It begins as disbelief. People hesitated, looked at each other, tried to understand. That hesitation, those few seconds, would cost everything. At 1:42 a.m., the mountain broke. Not in silence, not gently, but with a roar so violent it swallowed every other sound. It came like an explosion stretched across the sky. Snow, ice, trees, rock, an entire mountainside collapsing at once. The avalanche tore through the darkness, accelerating with unstoppable force. Nothing could outrun it. Nothing could resist it. The first train never saw it. One moment, it stood still beneath the stars. The next, it was gone. The avalanche struck with the force of 1,000 storms. Steel screamed, wood shattered. Passenger cars ripped from the tracks like toys. The train was lifted, thrown, dragged into the darkness below. Inside, people were tossed into chaos. No up, no down, only motion and terror. The mail train stood just behind. Its crew had only seconds. The engineer heard the roar, turned, saw white death rushing toward them. "Hold on," he shouted. Then the avalanche hit. Not as direct, but strong enough. Cars derailed, metal twisted. The train lurched violently before slamming to a stop. Silence followed, but not peace. Darkness, complete, heavy, unforgiving. Some survivors found themselves trapped beneath splintered wood, others buried in snow that hardened like stone. Breathing became difficult. Every movement felt impossible. Some called out, others couldn't, because snow filled their mouths, their lungs, their world. Above them, the storm returned as if nothing had happened. Henry Collins never made it back to the train. He had run toward danger, not away from it. His warning reached some, but not all, and in the chaos of that night, he disappeared into the avalanche he tried to outrun. No one saw his final moments, but they would remember what he tried to do.
For those who survived, time stopped. Minutes felt like hours. Hours felt like eternity. Some lay trapped beside strangers, holding hands in the dark, waiting, hoping, praying. Above them, rescuers struggled to reach the site, but the snow was too deep, the terrain too dangerous. Morning could not come fast enough. When the sun finally rose over the mountains, it revealed something no one was prepared to see. Where the train had been, there was nothing. Only a vast, broken slope of snow and debris stretching into the valley below. Rescue crews stood in silence because they understood immediately. This was not a rescue. This was a recovery. 96 people would lose their lives that night in what would become one of the deadliest avalanches in American history. But numbers don't tell the full story, because somewhere in that storm, one man saw it coming and ran anyway.